exhibition, I think they actually chose it.
Good one.
Come on. Oh.
Hello, I'm Peter Banbury. I'm one of the volunteers looking after the Whitstable Museum. One of the things that's important about Whitstable is the helmet diving, which was invented in Whitstable in between 1820 and 1830 by the Dean brothers, Charles and John Dean. So initially in Whitstable, quite a lot of activity amongst the fisher folk was going out either rescuing people or raising cargoes from sunken ships and things like that. And that was done from the surface initially using things like this grab that we have here. So that was just lowered on a rope from the surface and they hoped it would grab hold of something interesting like an anchor. Or hooks that were dragged along the bottom of the sea to catch in something interesting, which they then tried to haul up. But they had decided it would be much more helpful if you could get a person on the seabed. The problem, of course, is on the seabed you're swept around by currents. It's very cold down there and there's nothing to breathe. So they had to think in terms of a diving suit, a diving helmet, and pumping air down to the diver using an air pump like this, which is actually very hard work because the pressure of underwater is very considerable. So you need quite a powerful air pump to operate. And so all of that came together in around 1830. And one of the first dives they did was on the Mary Rose. So we have one or two items here from the Mary Rose. So we all think that the Mary Rose was raised about 40 or so years ago. But in fact the Dean brothers dived on her in 1836. They weren't archaeologists, they were just looking for heavy metal like cannons, brass and bronze and iron cannons that they could raise and sell to the Admiralty. So they actually were quite destructive. They used explosives and other things. But fortunately a lot of the Mary Rose was left in the mud and was completely unaffected. They did raise a number of cannons and other interesting artefacts. And we have here some of the objects lent to us by the current Mary Rose excavation in honour of the original work done by the Whitstable divers. So that's that section.
Okay, maybe just finish off with that Norwich Union vehicle there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, maybe just an explanation of what it does.
Well, one of the problems a couple of hundred years ago in virtually any town was fire. So a lot of the buildings, particularly in Whitstable, were wooden construction, then covered in tar to make them waterproof, which is a pretty dreadful way of producing a fireproof building. And for many years, the only possible way of putting fire out was buckets, a chain of buckets from a local pond or the sea, chucking water over the fire. But in 1867, the Norwich Union eventually, after a lot of persuasion, provided Whitstable with its own fire pump. So what happens here is you have 13 men on each side on this long pole, 13 on the other side, pumping up and down like mad. And then inside we have a pump, which is big enough to have a big hose coming from a local pond and another hose on the other side that goes out and can squirt water on the fire. So that was quite an important development. And of course it was horse-drawn, so we've got the hooks and the binding post there for two horses to be put in front. The horses were kept in the yard of the Bear and Key pub, just down the road, and the engine itself was in one of the high street, in effect a garage for the pub. and that made a certain difference. But ironically, in 1869, the biggest fire of Whitstable broke out, and one engine didn't really stand a chance. And I think 70 buildings were burnt to the ground along Harbour Street. So a single fire appliance wasn't enough.
Fantastic, thanks for your
There you are.
explanation.